This is Abe Friedtanzer from Awards Buzz. Very excited to be speaking with Samira Wiley about The Handmaid's Tale. How are you today?
I'm good. Very happy to be here.
I was double checking before I spoke with you because I was pretty sure I've been predicting the Emmys for a while, and I was pretty sure that when you got your first Emmy nomination for The Handmaid's Tale, my reaction was, "This is great," but I thought you were going to get nominated for Orange is the New Black, which had ended like your character arc had ended like 8 months or 10 months earlier. It was the same TV season, and having spoken to Elizabeth about going from Mad Men to The Handmaid's Tale and that being such a big part of her life. I'm curious what it's like for you, given that this has sort of been, back to back these two wildly popular shows.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I actually didn't realize that it was the same awards season. Um, it's and especially playing two, these two shows that have permeated the zeitgeist in the way that they have. It's kind of felt like a real whirlwind. I feel like people think I had like a lot of intention about the roles that I picked, and honestly, I don't know how this happened, but I have somehow been able to give voice to, which has been a pleasure, to different queer Black women's stories. And but it really has sort of felt like a, whoa, how did I get here kind of moment.
I do think this show and this role is certainly heavier, though, as we've gotten to know Moira a little bit. We've seen occasionally a softer side, especially when she really just gets to be with June away from everything. And one thing we spoke very briefly with Sam Yeager at the start of this season during what I'm sure was a very busy day of press for you. And basically the fact that like we hit on the fact that your two characters have been away from the action, that you've barely been inside Gilead for the whole part of this show, and that must be a sort of strange experience.
Is that
You
me?
looked very deep in thought, but I realized that you froze at some point.
Oh,
Um, do you want me
yes.
to repeat? Did you hear what I said or no? Missed some of it.
No, can you repeat?
Basically, that you've been, outside of the action, outside of Gilead for most of this show. That must be a sort of strange sensation, given how the unfortunately somewhat recognizable elements of a dystopian society that we see in the show are so vital to the immersive experience.
Yes, it's actually been this season it feels more it's really hard to try and fight from the outside like that. And especially I feel like in the first few seasons when we were in Canada, I kind of was like, what is this the Handmaid's Tale anymore? Like what do I have, how can I be Moira anymore? Because I felt like I really defined who that character was by being this fighter, being on the front lines. So yeah, it has felt a little weird to be on the outside. Definitely having June come to Canada in whatever season four, season five, helped me feel more in it. But this season, definitely, I think I really get back to who I know Moira is, the character that I created, the character that I understood her to be when I first read the pilot script.
What do you remember what that was? Do you
Yeah,
remember what like you thought of Moira versus what now it has become?
absolutely. There's this line I remember so well in season one, when June is like, she's really beaten down, downtrodden. She's in the Waterford house, and she's like laying down, I believe, and she says something like, "What would Moira do?" Or like, if I were Moira, Moira would. And so I think of Moira as someone who um doesn't doesn't give a much about backlash, who honestly is going to be on the front, like a frontline soldier, someone who is really stifled by being in Canada. How can you do that? So the person I think that June has become over the last few seasons, the fighter, the person that we see her to be now, I maybe narcissistically, I believe that that spark and that inspiration really did come from Moira. And that's the person who I'm excited to have people see us return to in season six.
It's always interesting to me. I remember when I think it was maybe season two or three when Emily was in Canada and they were like, Gilead has a list of all the crimes you committed while you were there. And it's like how are they to possibly be tracking these things? But I feel like Moira especially has been dealing with like the pesky legalities of like this
Yeah.
horrible
Oh,
stuff that anybody should be able to imagine is like morally objectionable is happening. And she's like, well, but you have to go through the right legal channels. And somehow like she puts up with it, which is insane.
yeah, it is. It's a very interesting place for her to be, and a place for her to work at this refugee center, all of this bureaucracy. Um, but I really don't know what else. I think in Canada, she's just trying to figure out what can I do? How close can I be to this? Who can I talk to? When she's trying to have those first meetings with Mark, Sam's character, she's just, I feel like she keeps knocking on a door, but she doesn't really know if it's the right door, trying to just figure this out. But I do feel like Moira has sort of been in a straitjacket for many seasons, trying to figure out how to get her arms free. And that is crazy making, especially when you have to assume the role of June in a way, being Nicole's mother, surrogate mother, being, you know, play wife to your husband, living in this home. And like, I feel like our lives have almost sort of switched because I feel like she's doing the things that Moira would be comfortable doing.
And the dynamic with Luke is definitely very interesting too, because I think he
Yeah.
gets what she's going through in terms of like he also never was in Gilead to fight, and it's a miracle that he's still alive. But like he wants to do stuff, but he's not quite as he doesn't really understand what it involves because he can't.
Yes, absolutely. And I think there's a similarity, but there's also this huge difference where even if you were in Gilead, you are a man. At the end of the day, even if you're a econo man, you're, you know, I forget what a driver, anything. These kind of trauma, the way that men look at you, the way that your body is up for grabs, the way that your fear is always at your neck is something that a lot of men in Gilead, out of Gilead, in the Handmaid's Tale, out of, will never experience. So there's always that barrier there.
Well, in episode 5, which is a big, exciting episode that we're going to assume people have seen while once they're watching this interview. So, fair warning,
Okay.
please catch up and watch before you continue this conversation. We do get a chance to see one of the men who functions within Gilead, who is not like everybody else, but still definitely benefits from a lot of privilege, and that's Commander Lawrence. And I feel like I would have liked perhaps to have this big, like, long conversation between Moira and him that there's just no time for. There's people getting in the truck. Like, you got to be focused on other stuff. But did you have any aspirations for that moment, and how do you feel it went out?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Number one, just because, I mean, it's Bradley Whitford. I mean, to be able to have had a scene with him was something that I had really always wanted and hoped for. But I can't even really conjure in my mind what that conversation would be because Moira literally has no idea who this guy even is, can't even understand the concept of having someone with the title of commander be someone that you could possibly trust, possibly even have any kind of conversation with. To assume that you even speak the same language is a hurdle for her to get over to even have that conversation. The look of bewilderment, the feeling of just being baffled the entire time that I'm supposed to be in this guy's trunk and trusting him and all of that is just mind blowing.
It is nice to see though June and Moira back together doing this in like a very I think it's even episode 1, right? That it feels like the first season, that it feels like the same kind of, hijinks where the stakes are definitely high, but they're still like they've managed to knock somebody out. There's nobody around. They're safe for a minute until they're really, really not. And that's a nice partnership.
Yeah, it's definitely it felt like getting back on the bike, you know. It felt like, oh, this is familiar. You know, I feel like I've been talking about Moira in Canada and that's been like a weird like unicycle that she's been trying to ride. But this having the back and forth with Lizzie just as a scene partner, just as an actor, just felt like home to me. And to have her also direct so much of this season has been a real, I mean, it's a gift. The trust that now exists between her and I is something that wasn't even there in first season. So it's amazing.
Well, I have not seen the final two episodes, but I have seen the next three episodes. And there's particularly a moment in episode 8 that I think is a cool Moira moment that we'll keep everybody waiting for. But I'm curious if, with no spoilers, what can you preview about the rest of the season and the rest of the show? Even just for tone,
Yeah.
satisfaction, Moira, whatever you think is safe to say, which is probably nothing.
Sure. No, there, I think about, this is in episode 5, when the guard, I believe, comes in and gives Moira some directive. I don't remember. And I curse back at him. I'm defiant. Um, that's that's the emergence of the person that is going to come out for the rest of this season. That person who we saw glimpses of in season 1 will be fully realized.
Well, I always like to ask, especially on a show with such a big ensemble like this, and I think it's very appropriate for you. There are so many great actors that you just haven't worked with because it just doesn't make sense. And it's that early exodus from Gilead, good for the character, bad for the character, interaction. Is there anybody who you really, really would have loved to have gotten to work with?
I would have really gotten to work with Max. Love to have gotten to work with Max. There's something about his performance that is just so there's like a beautiful reserve to it. There's I don't know, just the what he's able to do with a look, a smirk, the way I mean, like, just there's like things about his performance that I would have loved to been able to interact with. But and there's no character like him that I've ever interacted with. So and his smoldering look, all of those things. But no, that would have been really cool. Even also just to spend more time with Max.
I imagine it's like you're doing press with people, and it's like every season, you're paired with somebody different, but it's still
Yeah.
just that may be the most time you spend with them because you don't actually share
Yeah.
any scenes.
It's true. It's true.
Well, I know that the show is about to end. The Testaments has been announced. I don't know how things are going to end, how things are going to end for Moira. Do you feel like whether or not she survives, do you feel like you're done with this character, or if there was a chance to do more with her, you'd like to?
There are so many shows now that I feel like do not have the luxury of being able to tell their full story from the beginning to the end. They're canceled. They're just out. They're just gone. And it has been a real pleasure to be a part of this show and to feel like I have told an entire story. I do not feel like there's anything left to be said for Moira. I do feel like it is complete. And I've never gotten to do that ever. I mean, even on Orange is the New Black, that was cut short, was cut. And this is able to sort of have denouement. Is that the word? There we go.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's a great perspective. And I do think Orange is the New Black, I mean, to say like that character drove an entire season after that, like her death, and it was such a legacy. But again, it's weird because she's not physically there. And I
Yeah.
know you did appear, I think, once or twice in small appearances after that, but like, did you stay involved and like aware of what was happening on that show after your exit?
Um, Not, my wife actually, she was the showrunner for season 5. And even then I was like, I don't need to know what you're doing. And like, I was working on Servant's Trauma. It was just like, we can see it when we're ready. So no, I kind of really went immediately and immersed myself into The Handmaid's Tale. It was I think we started filming maybe like I remember something like a 4-month break or something between the two. And to have I just didn't have it. I just sort of let that go and put on the Moira clothes. So I don't know what's next for me, but whatever it is, I'm going to be putting that on fully. I do feel like Moira's story has been told.
Feel like you want to stay with TV or more film or whatever?
Right now I'm getting ready to do a play in London at the Donmar, Intimate Apparel by Lynn Nottage. And that is where I think about Bradley. Both of us went to Juilliard, and that is where my heart sings the most, really, on stage. But there's I kind of just want to do things that I haven't done before, if that makes any sense. So, yes, movies, plays, but also characters that I haven't played before. There's something about television and the way that just culture, people in our country, even around the world, interact with television that is it's special. It's something unique. It's not something that a film can do in the same way. It's a constant back and forth conversation. So I'm definitely not done with TV.
Well, on the note of interacting with television, what are you watching?
What am I watching? I'm not watching anything right now. Not a thing. Not anything. Everybody was watching White Lotus. I did not even watch that. I'm actually not really a big television watcher. I definitely don't watch my stuff. I don't watch anything that I do. But if you have some suggestions, you should tell me what. I honestly think the last thing I may have watched and like really, I think it was maybe like I don't remember Queen's Gambit, maybe. Maybe like that like really got me in that way. I really do immerse myself in my own work, and it's hard for me to hold space, hold room for everything in the way that it should be held. So maybe now that I have a break, I can watch some stuff.
There's plenty of good stuff out there, but I think that's a healthy attitude also. Well, I wish you plenty of luck with this theater opportunity and look forward to seeing what character you dig yourself into next.
Thank you. Me too.